Her father spoke. My wife complied. She held out her palm for the keys like a bailiff. No questions, no pause, just the sentence. Leave. Behind her, his voice carried from speakerphone, confident and final, as if authority were proof. Pride wrote the script. She read it. I looked at the doormat we chose together and understood that I no longer lived here. I put the keys in her hand and kept my name. I carried a wallet, an overnight bag, and a calm I did not recognize as mine yet. The door closed like a gavel. Night air opened like a window. The daughter of a patriarch doesn't need evidence, he had joked once. She needs instructions. Tonight, I learned how expensive instructions can be. I did not perform. I did not plead. I stepped off the porch and made a quiet promise I could keep. I will not fight with noise. I will return with facts. If blame shouts, paper will speak. If influence parades, integrity will walk. If they call expulsion safety, the record will call it what it is. At the curb, I booked a room and wrote 3 lines on a receipt. Tell the truth. Protect your name. Learn the paper. Anger asked for a stage. I gave it a chair in the hallway. Faith asked for courage. I gave it a pen. There would be time to feel later. Tonight, I needed sentences that hold under weight. I will not try this case in a kitchen. I will not weaponize gossip with counter-gossip. I will count, date, and sign. I will let policy say what pain would only garble. Forgiveness can come after clarity. Respect can grow back after boundaries are replanted. If you want to understand how a marriage bends to a father's voice, rewind with me. Before this door closed, the floor shifted, inch by inch, holiday by holiday, signature by signature, until partnership was replaced by permission. That is where the stakes were set, and where I first mistook quiet for peace. Let's start with what we built, and who moved it first. Rewind with me to the seasons before the speakerphone verdict, when partnership still felt like a table with 2 chairs. We built slowly, down payments and drywall, coupons and carpet, weekends that smelled like paint and boiled coffee. I brought a steady paycheck and a habit of making lists until noise gave up. She brought hospitality and light, the kind that makes neighbors linger on porches. We were good at ordinary, and ordinary is where the best vows keep their promises. Her father entered most rooms as if they already belonged to him. At first, it was harmless. A ladder lent, a stubborn bolt loosened. Stories about how men handle things. I respected his hours, his grit, his love for his daughter. Then the advice hardened into instruction. If he disliked a contractor, we fired him. If he wanted a certain brand, we bought it. If he said, "Trust me, kid," inquiry ended. Patriarchy is persuasive because it arrives wrapped in help. We financed a roof when storms made the old one a rumor. I covered the deposit, negotiated the warranty, and kept receipts because math remembers. He congratulated himself for recommending the company, then told my wife to thank him for saving us. I didn't argue. I installed the gutters and updated our insurance so storms would pass without memoranda. Image took photos. Integrity paid invoices. His opinions followed us into choices that used to be ours. When we discussed refinancing, he announced over Sunday stew that fixed rates were for cowards. When I said, "Let's run the numbers," he said, "What are you, scared?" The room laughed, and I learned how laughter can corner you. My wife began to defer publicly and debate privately, then defer privately too. "It's easier this way," she'd whisper. Easier for whom went unanswered. He curated our reputation like a press agent. Holiday photos had captions that edited context. Projects became proof of his foresight. When I asked to include a line about budgeting, he winked and said, "Don't bore people." He was generous with tools and stingy with credit. He loved saying, "A father knows," and people around him loved agreeing. Partnership slowly traded its voice for permission slips. Boundaries shifted like furniture when company comes. Titles moved into his name for convenience, then stayed. He suggested we open a shared line of credit he would monitor for our protection. Auto-pays migrated from the joint account without a conversation. When I asked for a meeting with dates and balances, he called me intense. My wife called me too formal, a phrase she never used before he started using it. I did not hate him. I hated the method. He policed belonging with jokes and inside references. He turned my questions into evidence against me. If I asked who, when, how much, I was anxious. If I printed a contractor's spec sheet, I was controlling. He framed my care as critique and his critique as care. Pride wore the uniform of wisdom. Humility kept sweeping the shop floor. The accusations, when they finally came, were reheated leftovers. He hides money. He tracks your movements. He isolates you with spreadsheets. Each had a kernel he could point to. Yes, I track expenses. Yes, I prefer plans. But the meanings were recoded. A budget became a cage. A calendar became a chain. The narrative gathered speed because the scaffolding had been built in smaller lies. Our church friends loved him. He shook hands hard and remembered first names. He offered to cover repairs I had already paid for, then presented the receipt at potlucks with a flourish. I learned to let applause pass through me like wind. Meanwhile, I scheduled the electrician, fixed the squeaky hinge, and kept premiums low. Image got thank yous. Integrity got the end of the month. I tried to rebuild partnership from inside the noise. I suggested quarterly sit-downs with documents and decisions. He called them board meetings, like it was a slur. I proposed that we set a rule. No commitments announced until both signatures are on paper. He declared that men move, and my wife laughed in the way that asks you not to make a scene. Laughter can be a leash when you are the only one not amused. The day the balance truly tipped looked like hospitality. He offered to help host a family fundraiser at our house. He handled invitations. I handled permits and parking. He toasted legacy. I hauled trash and paid the rental company. Then the lock. The lock changed before the story did. After the fundraiser, a locksmith arrived, as a precaution, and my fob blinked red where it used to welcome me home. "We can't be too careful," her father said, collecting the receipt and the credit. I stood on the porch with a rental invoice in my pocket and watched him turn my house into his evidence. Gatekeeping prefers polite clothes. He began answering vendors from my wife's phone, approving change orders I had negotiated down, then calling it decisive leadership. When the roofer asked about the warranty I'd purchased, her father replied, "I handled those decisions and approved an upgrade that only raised the price." I asked for a copy of the new scope. He laughed like I'd told a joke and said, "Trust the process, son." Financials were reorganized for simplicity. Auto pays migrated. Two-factor codes rerouted to a number that wasn't mine. A shared card became legacy, which meant I learned about charges after they posted. When I suggested a sit-down with statements and dates, he forwarded an article about overbearing spouses who weaponize budgets. My wife texted, "Please don't make this heavy," and added a heart. Image called me controlling. Integrity kept writing checks. The humiliations were quiet and cumulative. At a family lunch, he raised a toast to our generosity for the community event I had funded, then winked at me over the rim as if we were partners in a story I didn't choose. At the hardware store, he told the clerk, "Charge it to my account," then later asked me to transfer the difference, which exceeded the bill. When I asked for the receipt, he said, "You don't trust me?" And the air offered me the role of villain for even asking. Narratives traveled faster than clarifications. Cropped screenshots of my calendar requests floated through a cousin thread with captions like, "He schedules joy." A deacon advised me to be less rigid, without asking why the lock had changed. Friends who once asked for my help fixing their porches now sent links about controlling men with the care of people who prefer tidy stories. Blame is efficient when it's crowdsourced. The word safety entered the script and repainted the set. "She doesn't feel safe when you talk paperwork," her father announced at Sunday dinner, as if documentation were a threat and not a promise. My wife nodded with the exhausted relief of someone whose feelings had just been translated into a shield. I swallowed my rebuttal because in that theater even truth sounds hostile. The lockout itself was ordinary and absolute. I came home early to pick up the permit copies for a city inspection. The fob flashed red. The bell chimed to a dead handset. The camera blinked. Through the door speaker, my wife's voice said, "Not a good time." From the living room, her father added, "We'll coordinate through me." I stood there, keyless in daylight, listening to a man assign me a visitor's slot in the life I built. I stepped off the porch before indignation could stage manage me. On the curb, I texted a calm, time-stamped note. Here for permit copies, 2:05, 2:20. Will wait at the sidewalk. Please advise. It went unread while a new post appeared online about choosing peace over control. It featured my ladder and his smile. I took a photo of the front door for my records and counted to 30 before I breathed again. Doubt did its best work at night. Was I the one who had mistaken vigilance for virtue? Were budgets a cage and timelines a trap? Then I'd open the folder where math refused to lie. Roof deposit, premium paid, wiring invoice. The birthday hotel transfer her father thanked himself for at church. Watching facts line up steadied me more than any argument ever had. I asked for a mediated meeting. He replied that real men don't need referees. My wife wrote, "Let's not escalate." The permit expired, the inspection moved, the fine arrived with my name and the city's patient. I paid it, sent a receipt, and received a thumbs-up emoji from a thread that had once been a marriage. Pressure urged me to perform, pound the door, corner a conversation, win a room. But every instinct I trusted now said the same thing. Do not audition for a narrative designed to humiliate you. So I started documenting like a carpenter squares a frame. Full threads, not clips. Emails after calls. Photos with dates. Witnesses only when necessary and always with consent. Inclusion had been recoded as compliance. Belonging as silence. I would not argue with air. The next step would look like surrender to people who love scenes. I would walk away without permission and choose paper over volume. Dignity over begging. Proof over performance. The breaking point was coming, and when it did, I wanted a pen in my hand, not a bruise on my knuckles. It arrived on a Tuesday like weather you can smell before it breaks. She stood at the threshold with her phone face down, speaker on, her father's voice filling the hallway with certainty. "This ends tonight," he said, as if verdicts travel better by Bluetooth. My wife squared her shoulders and delivered the line she had rehearsed. "Pack a bag and leave. We don't feel safe." I could have litigated every syllable. I could have asked which part of safety looked like invoices, scheduling, and asking for signatures. Instead, I looked at the calendar tacked to our fridge. The inspection date crossed out because the permit expired while pride told stories, and I chose not to audition. "I'll collect essentials," I said. "The rest we'll schedule through council." Her father added volume. "Hand over the garage fob and the credit card." I set both on the counter beside a coil of painter's tape. "I'll return any keys still in my possession by courier tomorrow," I said. I walked to the bedroom and packed like a man who plans to return only with law. 2 shirts, work pants, toiletries, the notebook that had become a compass, and the folder labeled Access, containing the email where I requested a pickup window and the reply that refused one. I photographed the state of the rooms, the serial numbers on tools I owned before the marriage, and the empty file drawer where permits used to live. I emailed the images to myself and to a fresh account counsel would use. At the kitchen counter, I wrote 3 lines on a receipt. "Tell the truth. Protect your name. Learn the paper." I dated and signed it because signatures are tiny mirrors. She watched, waiting for me to break character and beg for consideration. The begging stage was over. "I'll be gone 7 days," I said evenly. "After that, you'll hear from council regarding access and division." "Don't make this legal," she snapped, borrowed voice loaded with borrowed power. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. Harder than pretending, yes. Easier than healing, also yes." I placed my wedding band in a small dish, not as surrender, but as a promise to stop tarnishing symbols with arguments they were never made to hold. At the door, I turned once. "I won't speak about this online. Please don't either. Let the record carry it." She did answer. Her father told me to go be dramatic somewhere else. I stepped into the evening without giving him my anger to spend. Outside, I texted a calm notice. "Leaving 7:42 p.m. will request scheduled access for files and clothing through council. No further contact outside email." Then I called a friend who knows how to sit next to silence. He drove me to a motel where the clerk slid me a key without asking for my side. Exile felt like fresh air. Agency felt like a pen. Panic tried to rehearse one more time. Process opened the binder and began. Morning turned into a spreadsheet before coffee. I drew a timeline down the left margin, dates, times, places, and let evidence step into its boxes. Bank statements showed the quiet work. The roof deposit, the insurance premium, the electrician's invoice, the hotel transfer that later became a toast. I highlighted each entry and wrote purpose, authorization, and confirmation beside it. Feelings argued. Numbers stayed sober. Cropped screenshots wilted under full threads. I exported conversations to PDFs, complete, with timestamps intact. Gossip prefers fragments. Truth arrives whole. Consent mattered. A neighbor forwarded the door cam clip we had discussed weeks ago. I saved the written permission with the file. It showed me on the porch at the exact minute. I was allegedly pounding, hands visible, voice calm, leaving after 2 calls. The guard's log matched. I added the expired permit notice and the city fine I paid because pride had rescheduled the inspection. I did not build a case against character. I built a record of conduct. At the community legal clinic, a paralegal taught me how to make binders breathe. Label sources, number pages. 1 binder for finances, 1 for communications, 1 for access and property. She underlined 3 phrases that would shape my week. Equitable distribution, peaceful possession, temporary orders. You are allowed to be precise without becoming cruel, she said, sliding a tab into place. Precision, I learned, is a kind of mercy. We drafted a statement of contributions without adjectives. Pay stubs, pension deposits, overtime approvals, receipts for repairs I initiated and paid, emails confirming contractors we both approved. A short affidavit documented the lockout. My curbside photo, the notice I sent, the unread reply. Every page got a date. Every claim got a document. Anger kept asking for a roll. I kept handing it the audience exit. Here is the PSA. I wish I'd known sooner. Document your contributions. Read before you sign. Keep your own records. Protect your rights without apology. If a relationship cannot survive clarity, it will not survive storms. Ethics and paper trails are guardians of love, not enemies. Do not harvest secret samples or parade private matters. Keep minors off stage. Let only authorized parties disclose private information. Let documents speak to behavior and agreements, not to biology or rumor. Witnesses stayed narrow and adult. The neighbor who saw me leave. The contractor who confirmed I funded the wiring repair. The accountant who could read a ledger without auditioning for a role. I did not recruit a choir. I asked a few people to remember. When the binders clicked shut, my lungs remembered how to work. Peace didn't taste like triumph. It tasted like accuracy. I booked a consult with counsel who prefers periods to exclamation points. Opened a small business account so invoices could replace insomnia. And sent 1 courteous notice through the attorney of record. No posts, no performances. The file would walk where footsteps fail. Next came the rebuild. Steady work, boundaries that hold, and a mentor who treats partnership like respect instead of control. Facts were ready. My voice had learned its volume. It was time to earn quiet by living well. Structure replaced adrenaline. I woke up before worry and let a checklist outrun it. Coffee, ledger, calls, tools, invoices. Rent doesn't accept feelings, and neither do light switches. So I put work between me and the noise. I priced like an adult, wrote scopes that fit on a page, and asked for deposits before labor. My name moved from the bottom of texts to the top of contracts. Paper first, then effort. Small jobs arrived the way recovery does. Quietly, 1 need at a time. A porch step that sighed under weight. A breaker that tripped whenever someone toasted bread. A handrail for a grandmother who wanted steadier mornings. I measured twice, explained once, and cleaned my footprints on the way out. Each completed invoice stitched a thread through the hole pride left. I stopped performing competence. I practiced it. Counsel trimmed heat from habit. Communicate in writing. Ask for schedules, not scenes. Seek temporary orders for access. Let the standing order protect assets. she said, clicking tabs into a binder that made my spine jealous. No posts, no counter-narratives. Precision is your friend. I replaced rehearsed speeches with dates and signatures. Where blame asked for witnesses, policy asked for pages. I learned to be brief without being vague. Routine returned like a muscle memory. I found a month-to-month sublet, a table that didn't wobble, and a chair that didn't complain. Mornings began with a run that taught my lungs their names again, then 30 minutes with the ledger instead of the feed. Evenings ended at 9, no calls after, because boundaries don't work if I won't. I cooked on Sundays, ironed on Mondays, and kept my phone face down while sleeping. An ally introduced himself in the middle of a leak. A property manager's regular plumber bailed midweek. He called my number from a neighbor's referral. "I need steadiness more than speed," he said. I replied, "Clear access, decisions in one call, deposit before labor." He said, "Done." We shook hands on a sentence. 30 hours later, the ceiling was dry, the schedule intact, and the invoice paid without a nudge. Partnership had showed its face. Alignment over applause. He modeled respect in emails I now keep for rainy days. When a tenant tried to reroute decisions, he wrote, "Please coordinate with him. He leads this repair." When a vendor blamed me for a delay their supplier caused, he asked for the order number, not a scapegoat. When we finished a building, he sent 10 words that felt like a vote of confidence. Calm saved me more money than speed this month. I registered a small company with a plain name and a precise promise. I opened a business account, bought liability insurance, and ordered invoices that spelled out deliverables without fog. My helper got paid every Friday before I ate out once. Taxes went into a separate envelope the way wisdom goes into habits you don't have to rethink. I wasn't hiding success. I was stewarding it with boring courage. My no learned to stand without furniture. No to exposure work that paid in pressure. No to weekend emergencies that began as someone else's poor planning. No to meetings without the person who can say yes. When I said no, I didn't include a monologue. When I said yes, the scope wore its own name. Peace grew where ambiguity used to siphon oxygen. Calm earned its keep. On a Saturday, a pipe burst behind a washing machine. I turned the whole building off, placed towels, and spoke to people who needed explanation more than expertise. I didn't audition for hero. I fixed the leak, wrote the report, and left the room better than I found it. A tenant thanked me for knocking before entering and for charging exactly what the rules permitted. Loud had gotten me lockouts. Calm got me keys. Noise still tried to crash the perimeter. Her father took his theater online, where influence borrows certainty. Screenshots arrived via friends I had asked not to deliver pain. I archived, not argued. Council's rule held, silence is not surrender, it is discipline. The folder labeled emotional weather grew without ever needing to be opened twice. Policy moved by calendar while rumor sprinted in place. Work widened. The property manager introduced me to a non-profit with a backlog of safety upgrades. We replaced exit signs that forgot their job, added grab bars where dignity would need them, and rewired a community room that hummed like a bad habit. They paid deposits on time and asked the best question I've learned to answer. What do you need to do this well? I said, decisions in one call, access when scheduled, no scope drift. They agreed. The project finished under budget because clarity does not waste money. Faith found a measurable shape. I prayed brief prayers, keep me accurate, keep me kind, and wrote down 5 mercies at night. A neighbor returned a drill I thought I'd lost. A stranger held a door while I carried too much. A client mailed a check early. None of it would trend. All of it earned gratitude. Providence felt less like rescue and more like rhythm. Courage and clarity holding hands until the day was done. Her father tried one more maneuver. A letter from the family requesting a meeting to resolve matters privately after I filed a formal request for access. Counsel answered for me. All communications through attorneys, all access per order, no exceptions. Pride prefers hallways. Truth prefers the record. I kept my appointments and let the clock earn my tone. When counsel said, "We're ready to file." I didn't feel triumphant. I felt prepared. Drafts named contributions without adjectives, requested equitable division without spite, and sought orders that protected access and conduct. We rehearsed like pilots. Checklist, contingencies, what to say if turbulence arrives. Answer only the question asked. Bring exhibits by number. Let the judge manage heat, she said. I ironed my suit because some kinds of respect start at a sleeve. The night before filing, I wrote 3 new lines. Do not perform. Do not panic. Do not poison. I signed under them like a contract with myself. Facts were ready. Emotions were contained. Tomorrow, systems would do what speeches can't. Papers would land and influence would meet evidence. My work was to keep my hands steady while their world discovered gravity. Tuesday carried the envelope like weather. Quiet, certain, already changing things. The process server read a calm script at the door, handed my wife the packet, filed the return, and time-stamped counsel. Our cover letter asked for nothing dramatic. Dissolution, equitable distribution, peaceful possession, scheduled access, and the standard order against waste. Within hours, systems moved where feelings stalled. The joint account required 2 signatures for large withdrawals. No new debt without consent. Utilities remained in place. The bank emailed its notice with the language I've grown to trust, as ordered. Her father tried to manage the air. He phoned relatives, drafted a family statement, and posted a parable about loyalty that never met a ledger. Spin sprinted, policy walked on schedule. In comments, contradictions began to knock. A cousin asked why a cropped message didn't match the full thread shared later by an aunt. A neighbor mentioned the door cam time. A deacon wrote, "Kindly keep this off the feed." I replied to none of it. Archive, not argue. Pages, not podiums. Counsel forwarded confirmations and tightened our lane. All communication through attorneys, all access by calendar. If they bait, we wait. If they bless, we save it. My wife's emails changed temperature. Heat and adjectives gave way to sentences that breathed. We acknowledge the standing orders. He may collect belongings Saturday at 10 with a third party present. Then a brief correction through counsel. Certain online statements were incomplete and will be withdrawn. I worked, slept, and ironed the suit I would wear to the first hearing. When friends texted, "Speak up," I sent the only line that matters now. The record will. Her father kept narrating. The court kept counting. Pride favors hallways. Truth prefers the docket. By Friday, the calendar held dates. The accounts held still, and my lungs held more air than they had in months. We were headed where influence cannot testify without proof. I packed the binders, checked the tabs, and let silence finish the week. The next door to open would be the courtroom, and I was ready to knock. On time, prepared. The morning of the hearing moved like a metronome. I wore a suit, checked the tabs, and met counsel outside Department 5. She repeated our plan. Answer only the question asked. Offer exhibits by number. Let the judge manage heat. Across the hallway, my wife stared at the floor. Her father sat straight in the gallery like a foreman. Gossip had brought an audience. We brought a file. When the clerk called our case, the judge set the temperature. No speeches, no interruptions, hearsay excluded. Facts first, she said. Feelings are patient. We took our table and opened Exhibit 1. Counsel began with money that never bragged. Exhibit 1, the roof deposit, cleared from my account the weak storms peeled shingles. Exhibit 2, the electrician's invoice, approved by both signatures, paid before the lights behaved. Exhibit 3, the insurance premium receipt that kept disaster from auditioning. Opposing counsel objected to relevance. The judge shook her head. Contributions go to credibility and division. Then came the birthday hotel transfer, captioned online as Providence. Counsel did not sneer. She read dates, amounts, confirmations. The judge compared ledger to timeline, nodded once and marked them admitted. Numbers stood still while narratives looked restless. Communications followed. Opposing counsel offered a cropped family thread where my request for budgets looked like command. Our Exhibit 4 laid the full exchange beside it. Vendors listed, ceilings proposed, a calendar offered. The judge read silently, then said, cropping changes meaning. The complete thread is admitted. A murmur lifted, then folded. Opposing counsel gestured toward the gallery where her father sat immaculate and said influence was necessary for safety. The judge leaned back. Influence has no evidentiary weight here. Conduct does. Show me acts, not atmospherics. My wife kept her eyes down. Paper aligned again. Adjective stood outside waiting. Access came next. Exhibit 5 was the door cam clip. Me at the porch, hands visible, speaking through the intercom, leaving after 2 unanswered calls. Exhibit 6 was the guard's log, showing my exit at the recorded time. Exhibit 7 was the expired permit, and fine paid after inspection slipped while stories grew. Opposing counsel suggested the audio was unclear. The judge replied, the video shows demeanor. The logs confirm time. The notice shows consequence. She looked at my wife. Did you alter access without arranging retrieval? Yes. At whose direction? A pause. My father advised it. The judge wrote quietly. Her father shifted forward. The judge lifted a hand. Sir, you are not counsel. You will not address the court. Counsel introduced Exhibit 8, an email from him to my wife and the locksmith. Please update locks today. I will handle questions. Opposing counsel objected to foundation. Related. Metadata. Recipient acknowledgement. The locksmith invoice attached. Admitted. The judge read the line twice, then asked, were you a party to the contract governing this residence? No. Did you possess legal authority to alter access? No. Then your instruction carries no weight here. Influence isn't ownership. He sat back, smaller. My wife testified next. The judge set guardrails. No hearsay, no social feeds, only events you personally observed. She described feeling overwhelmed. Doors closed and schedules announced by others. Opposing counsel tried to launder her father's conclusions through questions. Objection, the judge said. Sustained. My counsel asked one narrow question. Did you remove your husband without discussing evidence or arranging retrieval? Yes. Why? I believed my father's warnings. Did you verify them with documents? No. The judge wrote again, then said, feelings can be sincere and mistaken. Orders must rest on facts. My wife nodded, eyes wet but steady there. Her father took the stand briefly on our subpoena. He confirmed sending the locksmith email and approving a hardware order on a shared account. Counsel showed Exhibit 9, a bank authorization screen granting him control. Who granted this access? He said a clerk did. The bank's letter, Exhibit 10, indicated a call from his number requesting changes without required consent. The judge frowned. You are neither owner nor authorized agent. He attempted explanation. The judge ended it. Financial reorganizations without lawful authority will be unwound. Joint approvals resume for large withdrawals today. He nodded once, jaw tight, certainty leaking quiet. Closing arguments were short by design. My counsel summarized arithmetic and access, requested equitable division, fees, and orders protecting property. Opposing counsel spoke of history and respect. The judge interrupted gently. Respect isn't a remedy. Law is. She delivered rulings in sentences that sounded like level floors. Equitable distribution supported by exhibits. Peaceful possession clarified with retrieval schedule. Joint approvals reinstated effective immediately. No new debt without consent. No social commentary during proceedings. Counsel will advise clients accordingly. She added one plain line. Patriarchy is not an evidentiary rule. Influence does not substitute for proof. The record will govern here. We stood when told and sat when told, then were excused. In the hallway, her father started toward me, then stopped when my counsel raised her palm. Communication through attorneys only, please. My wife signed a receipt for exhibit copies, eyes rimmed and thoughtful, then nodded once when I stepped aside to give space. Counsel touched my sleeve and said, "Good restraint. Thank you for choosing nouns." I took the stairs instead of the elevator and let 3 breaths count themselves. Outside, winter sun found the courthouse steps. I felt taller by exactly the weight of adjectives I hadn't used. The orders worked the way doors should. They opened when they said they would. Saturday at 10. A neutral stood by while I retrieved files, clothing, and tools listed by serial number. No commentary, no ambient theater. My wife signed the checklist my counsel provided and handed me the appliance manual she'd asked for earlier. Her father did not appear. I thanked the neutral, set the keys the court required onto a plate by the sink, and left as scheduled. Policy over spectacle. Outside, a neighbor waved from the sidewalk and did not ask for details. We both respected oxygen. I did not post a lesson. I went to work and replaced 2 exit signs that had forgotten their job. Influence had met evidence and learned the room's grammar. Law likes nouns. The rulings did not humiliate anyone. They corrected pathways. A cousin removed a thread. A deacon sent a private note acknowledging he should have asked for context. My wife's emails shifted from heat to precision. Her father remained silent. Standards were rippling through the network that once clapped for stories. The next chapter would not be about victory laps. It would be about boundaries, holding, and purpose growing. By week's end, the clerk emailed signed minutes, and counsel proposed dates for settlement. No banners, just calendars. We would review charts instead of wounds, divide assets like adults, and write a short correction through counsel so oxygen returned. I planned a small grant with the clinic that taught me to tab binders because paper helped me stand. Restoration over revenge, I wrote in the notebook. Then I closed it, washed dishes, and slept. Tomorrow, the work would continue where cameras point. In accounts, in emails, in doors opening when scheduled. Policy would carry forward. My tone would remain steady. By the time settlement began, the orders had already steadied the floor. Fluorescent lights, thin coffee, 2 tables, 4 pens that did not click. We reviewed charts instead of wounds. My contributions stood where the exhibits placed them. The other side conceded more lines than they contested. Arithmetic felt like air returning to a room. Equitable division followed the math. Assets divided, debts assigned, fees apportioned, access clarified. There were no victory laps, only signatures. Her counsel filed a short stipulation, withdrawing certain allegations as unsubstantiated and acknowledging that cropped messages had mischaracterized my request. No adjectives, no press release, just a sentence that put oxygen back in the file. Through counsel, my wife sent a notice to family. We will refrain from online commentary. Prior posts were incomplete and are withdrawn. It was not warmth, but it was weight. Networks adjusted in quiet ways that mattered. A neighbor left oranges with a note, steady hands, and a relative who once forwarded accusations sent a private apology and asked for the full thread next time. At church, a deacon reminded everyone that prayer travels better without screenshots. Her father did not post an apology. He simply stopped narrating. The court's orders unwound his unauthorized access, removed him from accounts he should never have touched, and reinstated joint approvals for anything large. He learned the difference between influence and authority, the way doors teach weather. By closing, we divided furniture like adults and calendars like people who intend to sleep. She kept the house with a refinance she requested. I kept my tools, the business account, and the truck that carries them. We agreed to communicate only through counsel for 90 days and to keep relatives out of logistics. Boundaries finally became furniture that stayed where we placed it. Purpose needed a shape, so I gave it one. I set aside part of the settlement for the legal clinic that taught me to make binders breathe, and for a small program at the nonprofit that hired me for safety upgrades. We printed a practical booklet, Boundaries, Paper, Peace, and offered evening workshops where spouses learn timelines, consent in contracts, and how to speak in sentences a judge can hear. No names, no theories, just tools. A father who attended with his grown daughter thanked us in the hallway and said he had mistaken steering for care. We told him the same thing the court told us. Respect is not a verdict, it is behavior. Work kept me honest. The property manager added buildings to the route. The hospital wing called for more exit signs. Invoices went out on Fridays and were paid without chasing. Faith found me in the margins of the day, where I could say, keep me accurate, keep me kind, and then go replace a hinge. My wife emailed once about a manual. I sent the PDF and wished her a peaceful weekend. Her father stayed off the thread. What did not happen also mattered. No victory posts, no revenge tours, no gloating. Character does not need a camera. It needs habits. The orders held, the file moved, and peace returned as accuracy, not noise. When settlement finalized, I signed slowly, not to savor anyone's fall, but to commit to steady ground. I walked out into ordinary sunlight, with my tools, my name, and a path that did not require permission to keep going. Here is the only lesson I carried home that day. Restoration outworks revenge, and standards change rooms long after applause forgets their names. The moral lives where paper meets patience and courage every day. Character outlasts narratives. Wealth can rent attention. Integrity pays the bill when the music stops. I learned to answer accusations with dates, not decibels. To trust a signed page more than a loud hallway. When pride needed an audience, I chose procedure. When blame sprinted, I walked with the file. That is how a door that closed like a verdict opened again like a schedule. Do not weaponize status or family power to make people small. Put your name on the work your hands build. Document contributions. Read before you sign, and keep your own records. If a relationship cannot survive clarity, it will not survive storms. Forgiveness is not access. It is clarity. Civility is not surrender. It is control of your temperature. Boundaries are furniture. Once placed, they should not move when company arrives. Here's my faith note, spoken softly. Providence walks with courage and clarity, not with panic and pretense. I stopped asking for public vindication and started asking for steady hands, clean ledgers, and a calmer tongue. Peace did not shout. It showed up as accuracy, as doors that opened when orders said they would, as work that ended with thank you instead of theater. If you are rebuilding, start small and true. Write the timeline. Keep receipts. Speak in sentences a judge can hear. Choose partners who respect names, not just results. Say no without an essay, and yes, where values and paperwork agree. Protect minors and private matters. Teach your rooms to breathe. Greet the unseen. Honor the edges. Pause before harm. Restoration will outwork revenge long after applause forgets your name. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? In that kitchen or courtroom, what would you have done? Walk away? Forgive? Or bring receipts? Share one sentence you wish your younger self had heard when blame got loud. If this story strengthened your spine, tap like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a premiere. Drop a comment to lift someone who is standing on a sidewalk tonight with a bag and a name. Save this. Share it with a friend who needs calm. And join this community that chooses hope over cynicism and policy over spectacle. Your voice belongs here. Thank you for staying. Your steadiness makes these stories matter. Until next time, keep paperwork tidy, boundaries kind, hearts brave, and truth louder than noise.